Welcome, everyone, to another episode of our Daily Magic. This is Kai here. We've also got
Dell
in the house, and we have a very special guest today. But first,
Kai, drop the intro.
our guest today has a really, really special introduction. Like, blew my mind the first time that I read it, and I'm going to do my best to give this introduction justice. You got that joke, right?
What?
Justice? Okay,
Oh.
never mind.
Right? Really?
Welcome, Justin. Here's just a little bit about the magnificence of our guest. Former detective and SWAT breacher, shares his secrets for men to achieve their peak performance and regain their edge. In dealing with countless high-stress and volatile situations, Justin learned that integrity in every aspect is the most important factor in whether a man succeeds or fails. With over 14 years of law enforcement experience in SWAT, investigations, officer training, and leadership roles, Justin developed and shared tactics and techniques that help forge the next generation of leaders. There's just so much in there, and Justin, we're really looking forward to unpacking all of the amazing things that you do. Would you like to give us a little bit about, your origin story? How did you even get here? Thank you for being here.
Show, and I'm really glad to be able to share my story and just explain what's going on with me over here. But you guys are fun. I like this. So for me, like you said, I've been in law enforcement for over 14 years and done everything from being on the SWAT team, being a detective, being a training officer, being a supervisor. And I found out pretty quickly that I had a passion for training. That's what motivated me, was training the newer officers or being a supervisor and helping the guys figure out, how to be better, in every way. And I think it really took hold for me when I started teaching interview tactics and leadership skills and really learning about the emotional intelligence side and how to, implement that into the job. And then realizing how impactful that is on people's lives. And so I've taken a lot of the law enforcement tools I've learned through my career and turned them into self-development tools. And I've learned how impactful that can be on people's lives, learning the emotional intelligence, learning about, content analysis or vocabulary awareness, and just harnessing that to be better, not just at work, but at home, or whatever aspect it is that you're working on.
Yeah. So, what does that start to look like when you're like, okay, this is who I'm being out here in the world? And then when you come home, is there a dynamic that you have to deal with, or are you just the same person everywhere?
So there's really no defining line. It's an interesting thing. People think that leadership is only at work, in your business life. But really, the leadership aspect goes into your home life. Are you a leader at home? Are you a leader with your spouse? Are you a leader with your kids? The favorite story I like to share is one of my clients. He came to me. He was a business owner, and he wanted to work on being a better boss. He felt like he was kind of getting run over by his employees. He wanted to learn to stand up for himself more at work as the boss and interact with them. And so after a couple of weeks, we started working together. He was being more assertive at work and having better interactions. The best thing, though, was he told me a story about when he was at home cooking breakfast for his family. And he said he was cooking breakfast, and he ended up hitting his head on the vent above the stove. And he said normally he would have just gone off, just like thrown something across the room or punched a wall. And he hit his head. He said it really freaking hurt. And he's like, he looked over at his family, and they were waiting for the storm to happen. They know how dad is going to react, right? So they were like, oh, here it comes. And he said he walked over to the wall, he pretended to punch the wall, and then went back to cooking. And his family was like, hang on, this isn't what's normal. He said his wife walked over and she's like, are you okay? And she's like, this is not how you normally act. And he's like, I'm done pretending. Like, I'm done putting those emotions out there like that. It's all for pretend. It's all for show. He's like, I've learned new ways to deal with my emotions. And he said his wife gave him a hug. His kids gave him a hug. And the funniest part to me, he said the wife would start bothering him, like, hey, when are you getting another call with Justin? You need to get on the phone with Justin again. This is working. I like what's happening here. So it transfers to every aspect of your life. And some of these techniques that I teach to men, I also teach them to my daughter. So these skills are for everyone. So
love it. And I want to get more into it because now the curious cat is stepping into this now. Okay. With these skills that you mentioned that anybody can learn and apply, you go more into it. Like, what are these? Like, I know you mentioned emotional intelligence, and also how it helped your friend, and also what you do is help out men, but you say also could work out for women. I like to get into like the essence of it. Like, what is it for you? Like the emotional intelligence, the different ways of responding, or what are like some of like the tools that you provide for other people?
Yeah, the number one tool that I use is called the emotional matrix. Now, this is based off the 7 universal emotions that we express in the face. And this goes off of Dr. Paul Ekman's work about microexpressions. But the 7 universal emotions are happiness, sadness, fear, contempt, anger, surprise, and disgust. Now, regardless of race, creed, wherever you are on the planet, we all express those emotions the same in the face. And the emotional matrix talks about how, we feel, think about those 7 emotions as like umbrella emotions. And we experience those emotions in multiple different intensity levels. So you could think about, as far as happiness, you could be elated, which would be a high level intensity. You could be pleased, which could be a moderate level intensity. And then you could be like okay or fine, which would be a low intensity happiness. Now, all of those fall under the happiness category, but getting very specific with the emotions that we feel helps you identify the emotions and process them out. There's somewhere around 3,700 different emotional words, and most of us have a very limited emotional vocabulary. I think the stats are women use around 190 words and men use around 150. From my experience, that's a lot lower than that. When we give our students time to write down as many emotional words as they can to fill in a blank version of the emotional matrix, they're coming up with like 5 or 7 words. And so the majority of people have a very limited emotional vocabulary, which doesn't allow them to process out their emotions. So number one tool that I give to everyone is that emotional matrix, so you can start building that emotional vocabulary, so you can start processing out your emotions. Then you become more efficient. You're not dragging around the bad meeting from 8 a.m. for the rest of the day, and then you're not taking that home to your family, or you're not taking a fight with your family to the office the next day, because it all just cycles around.
Love it. And if you're open, I want to use like the live scenario like you just mentioned, because I know this is going to resonate with a lot of our audience out there, for those especially in the corporate world still, and having those 8 a.m. meetings or having whatever may have happened in the work that got them mad. And a lot of us, and even for myself, I've done it before in my corporate career, in which I bought the frustration and stress and anger from being mad at whatever happened at that meeting. I brought it home, in which I was angry and stressed and all this stuff at home. So for that type of scenario, what would you recommend for a person who may be going through something in that situation?
Sure. So the way to use that tool, the emotional matrix, is basically, So if you're dealing with something in the moment, it's kind of fresh. So what I do is normally pull out the card. I keep it with me, and I have a version that your audience can download on my website too, so they can have access to it. But the best way to do it is just you scan over this card, and there's numerous emotional words on this card. And I wish I knew the science behind this part, because there's so much science behind the emotions and the feelings that we have. But this one particular part is a little bit of a mystery to me. But as you scan over the emotional words, they'll pop out at you. And it may even be words that you don't use on a regular basis. The one that stood out to me, I used the other day, and I stopped on the word irked. And I was like, irked? I've never even used that in a sentence. I'm like, but why am I irked? And I'm like, oh, it's because of this. So the first step is to write down all of the emotional words that pop out to you. And normally you'll get somewhere between 5 to 12 different emotional words. My record in one incident is 35 different emotional words.
Wow.
No, that was, yeah, it was out of one conversation with my ex-wife.
Okay. I understand that now.
but that is my record, is 35 different emotional words. And so after you write down your number of emotional words, whatever that is, and there's no wrong number. It could be 5, it could be 35, right? You go back over it to each one, and it's like, why am I feeling that? Why am I agitated? Why am I worried? Why am I, bothered? Each one is going to have a slightly different reason behind it. And when you air that out, or you like open it up to yourself, you're like, oh, that's not that big of a deal, or I have no control over that, or maybe I can change this one piece here, or remove myself from the situation. But once you actually go through and identify it, there's what we call like an emotional dump, especially when you get one that really hits home. Like you're like, oh, I'm worried. You almost like get this release of that emotion. It's like when you push that button, it just releases the pressure. Because what are we all taught? Men are taught you're not allowed to have emotions, and women are taught you have too many emotions. So on either side of it, we're all being told that emotions are bad. And that's not the case. I don't believe that there's a such thing as good or bad emotions, because if you look at that list of 7 universal emotions, people would say, well, the only good one is happiness and the rest are all bad. And it's really about, are those emotions useful or not useful based on the context of the situation? And I think that's the most important thing for people to understand. But you first have to identify your emotions, and then you can go into why they're showing up, and then are they useful in what's happening right now?
Yeah. One of the words that I see, like, as we're being introduced to you, is edge. Like, what does that mean in the context of this conversation?
Well, it's really about finding like what sharpens you. Like, what are you doing to really like keep your edge? Because if you're not doing difficult things often, then you're falling behind. Because we all have a tendency to want to sit in our comfort zone, our little comfortable bubble where it's safe and nothing bad ever happens to us. But no growth occurs there. You have to push yourself on a regular basis. You have to do difficult things, whether that's being in the gym, or having a difficult conversation with your spouse, or putting down your phone before you go to bed at night. Like there are certain things that we don't want to do, but we know that we have to do it. And so it's important to keep that edge sharp in whatever it is you want to do. But you have to do difficult things often. That's one of my favorite sayings.
Nice. And how do you personally apply that? Like, what are some of the difficult things that you do? Because I'm thinking right now, I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean for me? And I can't really pick out anything at the moment, but I'm like, maybe you have a suggestion.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is having those uncomfortable conversations with people in your life. You know, whether you have to explain your feelings to your spouse and be like, hey, this is what happened. You know, this is how it's making me feel. I know that, you know, we can work through this, but I want to let you know that this is happening. And for men, that's really hard. Women have a much easier time expressing their feelings and telling their spouse what's going on with them. Men suck at it. Men are horrible because we think we're weak or we're broken if we, you know, have any kinds of emotions. It's a really horrible stigma out there. And I see it most when I get up in front of a group of men. Normally in the classes I still teach to law enforcement, it's normally, you know, 80 to 90% men in the class. And when I get up there and I'm like, hey, we're going to talk about emotions today, they all look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, hey, buddy, you're in the wrong room. We don't deal with emotions. That's not our thing. Luckily, being, you know, former SWAT, you know, gives me a little bit of street cred. I'm like, hey guys, if I can talk about emotions, then you guys can talk about emotions. And it takes a couple days for it to really sink in, to realize what a useful tool this is. Another thing that comes to mind is these communication skills, like practicing rapport building and just interacting with people in general. I used to be one of those guys that I didn't talk to anybody. I was like, I don't like people. I'm just going to stay to myself. I'm not going to talk to anybody. And that didn't benefit me. That just, you know, made me more isolated, and I didn't get to practice, you know, communicating with people. Now I talk to everybody. My girlfriend laughs at me because, you know, if we get in an Uber and we go somewhere, I'm going to know the Uber driver's life story before we get to our destination. Another thing that I would do, and now maybe not COVID, but I like to talk to people in elevators. You have a limited time frame to get that conversation going. So it's a test for myself to be like, how much information can I get about this person in an elevator? And it is an awkward situation because people act a certain way when they're in an elevator. They stand there and they just stare at the number and they don't talk. And so it's practicing these skill sets when they don't matter. So when they do matter, I'm already keyed up.
Nice.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's like a universal thing right there for everybody, practicing in every moment.
Mm-hmm.
For when you have to do it, it's just a practice. You're good to go.
So it's all about the preparation, right?
Yeah.
We've got a comment too from Yuvalka. She says, for me, I believe we need to be taught emotional intelligence as little ones because all emotions are useful. That resonate with you, Justin?
Yeah, I definitely believe it needs to be taught in schools. And the company that I work with, they're actually working about getting it into the school systems in Florida, the emotional intelligence part, because it is really important to teach your kids this. And what's sad is, like, most parents don't have this skill, so they can't teach it to their kids, and it's not being taught in the school system. Luckily, my daughter has me, so I get to, you know, key her up on this. And for her, like, it is those tough conversations for her as well, because, you know, reading her emotions and helping her with that process, you know, is difficult for her. Like, if she's scared or worried or anxious about something, and maybe she doesn't want to talk about it right away, but it's important for her to learn how to talk about those emotions. Otherwise, when she grows up, she's going to, you know, be a normal adult that doesn't talk about emotions and shies away from those type of conversations. So I definitely agree that parents need to be teaching their kids this, or if some way it can be worked into the school system. The usefulness of emotions, that it's based on context. You know, I think about this. Everyone knows this scenario. You're driving on the freeway and you get cut off. You almost get in an accident, right? Fear kicks in. That's the first emotion that kicks in. You swerve out of the way, you hit the brakes, you turn the wheel. That didn't happen consciously. The emotion kicked in your subconscious, and you reacted accordingly in order to, you know, stop the accident from happening. So that was a useful emotion. What happens next? Anger. You were yelling at the driver, "Oh, you inconsiderate SOB," and you're just in your car and you're pissed off. Is that anger useful? in the context of that situation? No. The fear was useful, but what followed it, the feeling that you created, because there's a difference between emotions and feelings. Okay. The emotions that we have are involuntary responses to our environment. Feelings are our thoughts about our emotions. So there's a distinguishment there. The emotion of fear that came up stopped you from getting in an accident. You were able to react. Well, then you think about, man, I was scared. I almost got in an accident. Oh, it's because of this idiot in front of me. So now you're mad, and that's that feeling that you created based on your thoughts about the emotion that was triggered. So it's a little bit different, but anger could be useful. If you were getting mugged on the side of the road and you had to fight off an attacker, anger would be useful in that context of the situation. So any emotion can be useful or not useful. It's important to understand the context. Because if you're just laughing in the back of a funeral, that's not a useful emotion. Happiness is not useful at a funeral, right? So it's context.
I'm letting that digest for a second. Like, I didn't even know there's a difference between feelings and emotions.
It makes sense. Emotions come up, and then you're feeling it. Feeling is like the process of the emotions going through this process. It makes sense.
Got it.
Oh, comment.
Oh, yes. Yuvalka says, yes, emotions and feelings are totally different. See, Yuvalka gets it. Me, previously, someone would ask me how I feel, and I would come up with words like that actually reflected what I thought about, the situation, instead of like, I'm like, what do you mean feel? Isn't this about what we want to get done out of the situation, or, what we're out to accomplish, or the difference that we want to make? I'm like, I don't even like really get it. And then at the same time, there's like this part of me that wants to cry. I'm like, what's that weird thing going on there? So, emotions are just a really, really interesting character.
Sure.
There's even not a story, but like an article that I read that also emotions carry messages. Is that, like a belief that you've subscribed to or that you've heard before?
I'd like to read what the context of that was really about, but it's our body telling us that we need to change something about our environment. And so whether it's a conversation that we're having or someone that we're having to deal with, when those emotions come up, it's trying to invoke some type of change. It's like, stop having this conversation, or at least acknowledge what's happening. Because you think about how we evolved, our emotions are what kept us safe. And that's what keeps us in our little comfortable bubble, because our brain doesn't know the difference between physical harm and emotional harm. And so emotions can be triggered by either, but we want to avoid harm in all cases. And if our brain picks up on patterns like, well, last time you did this, last time you got in a relationship, you got your heart broken and that really hurt. So let's not get in another relationship. Let's keep distance because of the possibility of pain. And so whether it's physical or emotional pain, it doesn't matter. Just like you learn how not to touch a hot stove, not doing that again. So the fear gets triggered again by the idea of, oops, I almost touched the hot stove. Just like if you had your heart broken, there's fear or anxiety about getting back into a relationship. So I think in a way, yes, you can say that emotions do carry messages. It's telling you to change what's going on. But if you don't acknowledge the emotions, they're just going to hang out and just continually try to creep out in one way or another. So it's important to process them as quickly as possible. And you talked about, certain words that people use. One I will tell you guys and your audience to stay away from is frustrated. A lot of people like to say, oh, I'm frustrated. Well, that's like using a shotgun to pinpoint your emotions. Frustration could be several different emotions in different combinations. You could be angry and sad. You could be, disgusted and contemptuous. So you're not getting laser focused when you say words like frustrated. So remove that from your emotional vocabulary. You have to get laser focused. You want to be that sniper going, this is exactly how I feel. I'm anxious, I'm irked, I'm pleased, whatever those specific words are. And that's how you're able to process that out.
Got it. We have a comment from Christina. Christina says, love is no pain, no gain. Very interesting.
Yeah. And I love what he mentioned about the relationship thing of how past relationship experience, those emotions show up, and then the fear of that pain coming back from that relationship, it's like dictating your present life. Well, that's how I see it. And just from experience, from my own self, is like my past experiences. When I bring my past experiences of what happened into my present experiences, I'm not fully living in this moment. I'm living in this moment in a limited mindset and limited beliefs because I wasn't able yet to process the emotions that I felt from before.
Sure.
And from my own experience, when I actually do process my emotions from what I felt and also acknowledge it, like you said, like that emotional intelligence, writing down more like that sniper focus. I love that term, by the way. The sniper focus on the emotion that you felt from those things and allow yourself to process it. Then you're able to not only shift that relationship or shift that situation, but it allows you to shift and be even more present into this moment, free of those emotions. But of course, if you don't handle your emotions, and I know that from my own experience as well, your emotions are going to show up.
Yeah.
As you were talking about a couple minutes back about the whole car thing. Like for me, I would get so angry at a car with that thing happening, and of course, I'm like sort of angry about that thing happen, but I needed a moment to let the volcano erupt with anger because I'm angry and frustrated. I'm gonna use it. Angry and perceived frustration because all these emotions that were happening. So then that one moment allowed me this opportunity to And also, what I used to do too, in moments of interaction with people, it would be the same thing, that volcano eruption, because I'm not processing my emotions.
Sure.
And I'm sure that resonates too with our audience too. There's people out there who may be like that volcano, or maybe they experience people with that volcano. So in those type of situations, how would you recommend, let's say like one, for a person to really be able to process that so the volcano doesn't erupt? And then two, if they come in a situation, because I'm pretty sure not only from what you do now, but from your previous experience in law enforcement, like dealing with people who are volcanoes and like erupt, how would you be able to hold a space and be able to help people as well, like those type situations?
Sure. Yeah. And you touched on a lot of different things because, if we do carry those emotions across from our past, then you're punishing the people today for things that happened to you last year, a decade ago. And so it's important to understand to get rid of those emotions so you're not punishing the people that you are having an interaction with and moving through that. So there's different levels of emotional intelligence, and the first one is really understanding your emotional vocabulary, and then it turns into self-awareness and self-managing. Once you start to be able to do that, manage your own emotions and manage yourself, then you can help other people manage their emotions. And that's something I do with my daughter, with people around me. The funny thing is, and have you ever told someone to calm down and they actually calm down? It never works. Never. Because calm is not the emotion that they're feeling. And so you're not being accurate with the emotions that they're feeling. So what we can actually do for others, whether it's our spouse or our children or other people that we interact with, is we can be their emotional vocabulary. So if someone is really upset, instead of telling them to calm down, I would acknowledge it for them. I would be like, hey, it seems like you're pretty agitated about this situation. And if you hit the nail on the head, they're going to be like, yes, I'm agitated because of this. And so it gives them that release. And what actually happens when you pinpoint that emotion for them, there's physiological sensations that happen. You actually end up reducing their heart rate, and they end up calming down because you help them identify their emotions. And so once you really start mastering this skill of your own emotional intelligence, you can start helping other people with their emotions. And one thing I say with this, I always say to guess low. I never give a high intensity word to someone I'm having a conversation with. So I wouldn't use agitated or terrified or panicked. You always want to guess low, because give them that leeway to be able to go higher. So if I'm like, hey, well, you seem kind of mad about this. I'm not mad, I'm irritated. If they take it a step up, great. Then they pinpointed it and they're able to release that. But you don't want to go high and say, oh, you seem like you're terrified. And they're like, I'm not terrified. I'm just a little worried, but helping them get to that. And the way you phrase it too, as you can tell, I said, it seems like. You never want to say, I know you're mad. I know you're sad. Don't do that. Because then you're like accusing them of being a certain way. And we already have this notion that emotions are bad. But if you say, well, it seems like, or it looks like, or sounds like, it's a little softer way to suggest what you're seeing. And it gives the person a way out, or a way to correct you without feeling defensive about it. So if you have someone in your life that doesn't have a high emotional intelligence and they do blow up, own it. Like, tell them, hey, I get it. It seems like you're pretty mad about what's happening. And in a way, you will end up calming them down by giving them those emotional words.
Totally. We've got some comments about what you said here. I'm just going to read a few of them. Yuvalka says, I agree that emotions carry messages. It's the feelings that I practice to keep in check. The feelings of anger, the feelings of jealousy, and the mixed feelings of frustration. It's a constant self-study of how do I feel? How am I feeling? And what is the emotion that I'm experiencing? I rather have feelings out than hold feelings in.
Sure.
I like that.
Yeah. And Akila is a fan of the conversation. She said, ooh, these gems are everything for communication. Yes.
Yeah. That's a great word right there. Communication. We think communication is just verbal. But communication can come all these different ways.
Yeah. The stats are funny about it. You break down the statistics about communication. Only 7% of communication are the words that we use.
Wow.
And so if you're sending a text message or an email, you're only getting 7% of communication. But we place so much weight on the words. The breakdown normally is it's 63-37. So 63% is body language and facial expressions. 30% is the tone of your voice, the pitch, and then 7 is the words. So we communicate more in person with body language, with our facial expressions, and a lot of that stuff is picked up subconsciously. But even just the way that we, phrase certain sentences, because I could give you the same sentence over and over again, but just where I placed emphasis is going to make a difference. I can say the sentence, I didn't say you were silly. Okay. I didn't say you were silly. Okay. That means someone else did. I didn't say you were silly. Maybe I thought it. I didn't say you were silly. No, I said somebody else was. I didn't say you were silly. I said something else about you. Same exact sentence, but you place different emphasis on it, and it completely changes the context of what's being said. So the words are not that important. It's what's behind it, the body language that we have, the facial expressions that come from the emotions that we're feeling. So people place way too much weight on the words that people choose to use and not enough on the emotions that are coming up, because they the emotions that come up create physiological responses in our body, and we feel a certain way. And whether you know it or not, we're all picking up on micro expressions in body language, and it's subconsciously being registered. Consciously, it's a little bit more difficult. You need to train up on it. It's a whole different thing. And once you open Pandora's box, you can't shut it off. From my own experience, sometimes I wish I could turn off the fact that I see everybody's micro expressions, but it's something it's stuck there now. I got to deal with it.
Nice.
That's a wonderful gift right
Human
there.
lie detector.
Yeah, right. Pretty much.
Yeah. When we train people up on it, we give them a caveat. We're like, do not use this on your spouse. Kids are free game. Kids are free game, and everybody else is free game. But do not use it on your spouse. So, and my girlfriend, she understands, what I'm capable of reading. There's certain times when I'm like, hey, do you want to talk? And she's like, nope. And I'm like, I'm just gonna leave it alone because I can see it. And I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna give her a minute to process that. So I don't use it on her. Even though I see stuff, I'll leave it alone. So
smart. Akila says, can we have that in a breakdown again? My elders were trying to teach me these means of communication and listening and how we speak, because that's how emotions register for me. So Akila, if there's more that you can say about that, the breakdown of which part, I mean, this is all so juicy. Akila says, sign me up for Justin's next coaching seminar. I'm enrolled.
Awesome.
It reminded me of one of my past lives, or past lives. Yeah, past lives in my corporate world when I worked for the company Celebrate. So Celebrate helped with law enforcement with the cellular extractions. And it just reminded, when you said the part of don't use it on your spouse, I never forget when I got this one call. I was on the sales team, and it was this person who called me and was like, I suspect my wife of cheating on me, and I want to get a Celebrate device to extract data from her phone to find out she cheated on me. And I was like, yeah, I can't do that.
Wow. Yeah, no, don't. Yeah. If you're that far, there's some other issues that you have to solve in your relationship if you're already to that point. But
exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I'm curious what they mean about the breakdown. If it's the percentages, it's 63%, body language, facial expressions, 30% tonality and pitch of your voice, and then 7% words. If that's the breakdown that they were asking for, but I think it's really interesting. And then once you go into content analysis, that's when you really can dive into the words, and that's actually another tool that I teach as well. Focused on yourself and monitoring your own thoughts and the words that you use. So content analysis is based on determining the truthfulness of written and spoken word. And they get broken down into different categories of words. The one that's most prevalent is stop action verbs. Now, these are words like trying, I want it, I'm planning, I mean to, I'd love to. And we use these words so much in conversations, and we're really saying nothing. Like we could have a conversation like, hey, I'm trying to eat better, and you guys are like, yeah, we're planning to start going to the gym, and yeah, man, I've been meaning to do the same thing. What did we say? We said a bunch of nothing. Like there was absolutely no action in there.
Yes.
Rather than saying, I will do this, I am going to do this. It completely changes the context. I love the Yoda quote. There is no try. There only is do or do not.
Yeah.
It's so true. If you're trying to do something, you are implying failure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
wow. 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 We got to record that part, put that out there, because that was a magical bomb.
Well, I put it like this too for people that still don't register. Well, it's just words. Okay. I dare you to walk up to your spouse and tell them, I'll try to be faithful to you.
I'll try to be faithful to you.
Ooh.
That doesn't land right. Like I plan to be faithful to you. I mean to be faithful.
Yeah.
Well, you accept 100% certainty in that statement, right? I will be faithful to you. I am going to be faithful to you. Why do we allow ourselves that level of uncertainty or a way out when we talk about the things that we want to do or the goals that we want to accomplish? So stop yourself when you use those words. I have to do it myself too. Even though I know this and I teach this, there's certain times where like, yeah, I'm going to try. No, hang on. I'm going to do this. I have to catch myself out loud, rework that neural pathway and go, hang on, let me make a left turn instead of a right turn here, and catch myself when those thoughts come up or when I'm talking and those words come out. And when you start changing your vocabulary, when you start talking with certainty about the things that you will do or won't do, your actions change. Then your life changes.
Yeah. We all have wishful dreams and wishful things that we would like to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that next step of I'm going to do this, that determination and the action. And for me personally, when I say like, oh, I would like to do this or I would like to do that, the reason why I say I would like to compared to I'm going to do it is fear.
Sure.
Fear like, oh, what if this doesn't go right?
Yeah. You're giving yourself a way out. You're like, it's okay if I don't do this. I'd like to do it. Doesn't mean I have to.
Yeah. And then from there, like, or times before I would stop myself from that because like I'm fearful, what if it doesn't go right? And then I ask myself in a different way, like when it happens, like what if it doesn't go right? Well, I get an opportunity to get it right.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea when it comes to that aspect of being fearful to do something, flip it on its head. We should be fearful to not act.
Wow.
Like, what if I don't start that business that I want to? How am I going to feel then? What if I don't start working out? Like, how am I going to feel? So you flip it on its head. Don't worry about the fear of doing something, the fear of failure. Failure is the best teacher that we have. Success doesn't breed like learning. You learn from failing. You learn like, okay, I'm not going to do it that way again. Or part of this worked. Let me adjust this a little bit. Failure is not a bad thing. Now, if you give up, that's a completely different thing. It's good because failing is different than being a failure. Everybody fails. Winners fail all the time. You think about, Bill Gates or, the owners of these huge companies, they all failed multiple times in their career. But they just kept going. They were persistent with it. Now, the ones that gave up, those are failures. Those are the people that we don't hear about because they didn't keep going.
Wow. We got a comment here. I hear Justin speaking to not only creating a different way of doing things in life, but also talking about doing something.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever that is for you, right? Like finding your purpose and doing something rather than just mulling around and, surviving life. There's a difference between living your life and surviving your life. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people out there are just surviving. They're going day to day. They wake up, they eat some food, they go to work, they come home, they go to sleep. They get the necessities enough to survive their life. But are you actually living your life? Are you enjoying what you're doing? Are you expanding yourself? Are you growing? Are you having tough conversations? Are you moving your body? Are you staying healthy? Like, are you thriving? There's a huge difference there.
Great point. Wow.
You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome.
I feel like I need to go meditate now and like really think about what I'm doing.
This is very powerful. Lots of gems, magical nuggets of this.
Awesome. I'm glad I can share it with you guys and your audience.
Yeah, we've got more comments.
Sure.
So it says, let's see. It says, no, I have to try and fail in order to see what I can do differently and have others see me doing. The doing is what matters, not just talking about it. And yes, that living and not surviving. And Uvalka says, for me, the persistence to succeed overrides the resistance. Ooh, of anything. That,
I like that.
gotta write that down somewhere.
That right there, I think that comes from finding your purpose. Because if you are living purpose driven, you will be persistent. You will be okay with failure. If this is actually what you want to do, you will be okay with failure, and you'll get up, pick yourself up, dust off, and keep going. But I think it's important to understand why you're doing things in your life, and is it what you want to do? And once you really find that purpose, nothing's going to stop you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Purpose driven is always like, it's an infinite fuel.
Mm-hmm.
It never runs out. It keeps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the outward motivation, they don't always last. You know, it was like, well, what's the next book I need to read, or what's the next motivational speech I need to get to? That might get you through a few days, but if you don't find something within you to sustain like the motivation yourself, you're not gonna last. So they have these seminars that they're like pumping everybody up. They're like, yeah, I get real excited. And sure, I believe that it works for some people and it lasts for a finite amount of time, but then it kind of tapers down if you don't have that internal motivation, that internal drive to do something. And again, if you're really not motivated to do the job that you're in or do the project that you're assigned to, how motivated are you really going to be? I mean, your boss can only motivate you so much. You know, it's about finding that internal motivation. That's what's going to help with persistence and the longevity and sustainability of your self-motivation.
Yeah. And there's different, like for me, there was different ways of motivation. Let's say like motivated by your purpose, motivated by that love and the passion. It's, it's a more like fluid energy compared to being motivated by fear. And especially in the corporate world and also just as a kid, when a parent motivates you by fear, do this or you're gonna get whooped. Or or like in the job, like, oh, I was in sales, so motivated by fear, like, okay, hit your goal or you're gonna get fired type of thing. So I'm driven by fear and that type of thing. Oh, I gotta get this, gotta get this, gotta get this.
And fear is a powerful motivator, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Like you can't live like that for very long. And it definitely doesn't help build those relationships, because if you have a boss that's motivating you by fear, how long are you really going to be at that place of employment? Yeah. You know, most people leave their jobs because of managers, not because of the company itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Remind me when I decided to quit this one job right at that moment, being motivated or trying to get motivated by fear. And it was like, oh, if you don't hit this goal, you're gonna get fired. I was like, oh, really? Well, then I'm gonna quit, because like it was at that time. I was dealing with a lot of emotions at that time, and then that was like sort of like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and I had to wear this. So like, wait a second, like, are you serious?
It's not sustainable, and that's obviously the sign of someone that's not a good leader and not, you know, helping, you know, motivate the people around him or her, and, you know, bring them up, because that's what its leadership is about. It's about you're the one working for your employees. If you're the leader of a company, you know, it's about bringing the people up, either to replace you at one point or to have them, you know, take control and build them into a spot of trust, because it's these skills, we teach the same exact skills in the interview class as we do the leadership class, because it's all communication in emotional intelligence. And it's sad that the higher you climb in a company, the lower your emotional intelligence gets. The studies show that it's most likely due to reducing the number of people that you interact with. So like first line supervisors, they have the biggest emotional intelligence because they're dealing with the majority of the employees and they have to deal with management. So they have to talk with everybody. They have to play both sides of it. But as you promote, the number of people in the company that you have to deal with shrinks until, like, say you're the big boss man and maybe only 2 to 3 people report to you. So you're not practicing your emotional intelligence, which is a diminishing skill. If you don't practice it every day, it's going to go away. So you get to the top and now your emotional intelligence has reduced. And now, maybe you're not making good decisions. You're not treating your employees right. So it bleeds out into all different aspects, and maybe, even into your home life. So it's important in all levels of business to have these and understand how important they are in leadership.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's such a great point. And also we have like this this force of solopreneurs, that's popping up in the world. And it's like when you no longer have the corporate environments, I mean, even with, our social situation nowadays, what is actually happening to your emotional intel? That
Sure.
it sounds like, like we need a Power Gym 5000 in order to understand how we're working that muscle or if it's getting atrophied.
Yeah. Yes, especially with the Zoom calls and everything. What's going on in the world right now is only escalating the decline in our emotional intelligence. We're not practicing these social skills. We're not interacting with each other on a normal level. I heard something that was very interesting, that the science behind it, even on the Zoom calls. You think about, we're normally used to dealing with people in a 3-dimensional world, right? But right now, you and I, we're talking in a 2-dimensional world. So even though we can see each other and maybe we can see certain micro expressions and a little bit of body language, our brain is trying to make sense of what we're seeing, because it's like, hang on, like I should be seeing more depth and dimension. So we're not picking up on all the right body language. We're not picking up on the micro expressions as much. And so it builds, this, fatigue from being on these virtual calls. And it's not helping with our emotional intelligence. It's not helping with those skills. So we need to take those opportunities whenever we have them, when we are in person with people and interacting with others, and practice that every single time. Whether it's the clerk at the gas station or your waiter, your waitress, when you go to get something to eat. I practice these skills with every person that I meet. And it's to benefit myself and the people I work with and my clients. Like, I need to keep myself sharp, that edge sharp, right? So I can help others sharpen their edge. So it's even more important nowadays.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It makes me think of like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Like if we have a piece of gum that tastes like Thanksgiving dinner, then we forget how to carve a turkey.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like really well and abstract, but totally related at the same time.
You're right. No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. What can we find at confidenceunchained.com?
So yeah, on my website, it gives you a little bit of background on me. So my main focus right now, I'm working on this virtual summit coming out the end of the month. We're going to have I think we got about 25 different speakers. It's really focused on, it's all male speakers. It's really a summit focused on helping men develop their self-awareness and emotional intelligence, because I work with mainly men. I have worked with female clients before, but I do focus mainly with male clients. So the virtual summit that's coming out, that's my main focus right now. It's a lot of amazing speakers that we're going to have, and I'm really excited. It's a lot of work going into it. I've had to use my own tools on myself to keep myself motivated, to process out my own emotions, to really keep myself like up to par on what's going on out there, but making sure I'm keeping myself healthy, all of these different things. But yeah, on the website, it'll really give you a deeper understanding into the 3 pillars that I focus on, which is mental toughness, emotional fortitude, and health awareness. And I really believe that those 3 support each other, and there's not one that's more important than the other. we all tend to develop one over the other, and if you're lucky, you have a secondary one that kind of comes along with it. But we all tend to have that third piece that's just falling behind. And you really want to, get that into working order, whatever that is for you. I kind of joke about it. There's 3 different categories that I see people in. Like if you have like the mental toughness and maybe emotional fortitude, that's probably the most common. That's the unhealthy businessman. So he's out there, he's motivated, he can actually deal with his employees, but he's not taking care of himself. He's out of shape, he doesn't have a lot of energy, he doesn't have time for the gym, right? And so is that unhealthy businessman. Another part of that would be maybe someone that's, into fitness, they work out a lot, and maybe they have some of that drive, that mental toughness, but they're lacking in emotional fortitude. That's that unemotional tough guy. They don't, I don't have emotions. Emotions are for weak people, whatever that is. It's just they're lacking in their emotional intelligence, but maybe their relationships aren't doing very well because they don't know how to communicate with people. They don't know how to acknowledge the emotions that are coming up. And then the last one is maybe someone that's healthy and has their emotions in check, but they're not very driven. They don't have the mental toughness. That'll be like your unmotivated yoga instructor. And so it's those 3 different categories, and it's a little funny to think about, right? But we all seem to be lacking in one, and we can always improve it. And once we improve that one area that's lacking, it actually supports the other 2. For that unhealthy businessman, if he actually took care of himself and maybe went to the gym and ate better and drank more water, then he has more energy. Well, then he's more productive. Well, then when he gets home, he's not going straight to bed and he's actually talking to his wife. So it can literally change your whole life if we focus on what our weak area is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got questions. People want to know when your virtual event is. Can the details be found on your website? Everybody remember confidenceunchained.com.
Yeah, right now the event's scheduled for January 28th through the 30th. There will be details up on the website. The speaker page is getting built out right now, and it may get bumped into February, but I'll say stay tuned. Check back on the website. The details will be there. There's a lot of moving parts. This is the first virtual summit I've put together. It's a lot of work. A lot of moving parts, but I'm super excited for all the amazing speakers that are going to be out there. But either the end of January or beginning of February, and there will be details on the website there, Confidence Unchained.
That's right. And thank you, Yuvelka, Christina, Akila, for all of your great comments and questions. We see you. We appreciate you. And Justin, thank you so much for this wisdom that you're sharing with us today. Like, literally, emotions are magic. And I had no idea when we first started this conversation about the many discernments that we would be able to create together. So I'm super grateful for the way that you've contributed to this conversation and my life.
I appreciate you guys having me on here and sharing it with you. I love talking about this stuff because the more I get to talk about it, the more it hones it and makes it, more real, and just I'm able to share it better with my clients and everyone out there. But I really believe that everyone needs to, have an understanding of emotional intelligence, and it would really make an impact across the world if everyone could really get this skill in check.
Oh yeah. We won't be going to war with each other because we'll handle the war within us first.
Yes.
A war within, how can it be a war without?
I like that.
Quote. And Akila says, thank you all for being here, being the light that you are in the world. This was a really great conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. It was great.
You're very welcome. Hour has gone by already, and all we can say is tune in, join us again next week.
New year.
Yeah, this is the last episode of the year. Thank you for closing out the year.
Yeah, right? This is a great one. Yeah, this is a great closing for the end of the year for our podcast.
That's right.
And with these tools that allow people to really do the inner work.
That's right. Get your emotional intel up. All right, everyone. Stay tuned and
Stay magical.
see you next